Time for y-axis labels. Let's just pop that guy down. We'll come down here. We'll say data and data.length is greater than 0. Render y axis ticks. Come over here. Const render y axis ticks. Now we're also, as we did with the calculate width, we're going to need a const calculate height. This is where it gets a little bit more fun. We start to have more fun. We're going to have the most fun when we actually start to figure out how are we going to draw a line across this thing, and how are we going to make a nice curvy line. But we're like 3 videos away from that. So let's just say const xmax or ymax, and we're going to take our data and we're going to reduce it with an accumulative and a current, and our default value is going to be 0, and we're going to say return if the current y key is greater than the accumulated. They're going to return the current y key. Otherwise, we're going to return the accumulator. And here we're going to return y max. We could, for all intents and purposes, const y min. We're not going to use this, but we're going to do it anyways. Accumulated current. Our starting value is going to be 999, or we'll make it the y max, because that's the biggest value that we can possibly have. And we'll say return if the current y key is less than accumulated, return the current y key. Otherwise, return the accumulator. Return the y min right here. And we're just going to say let min equals 0. We could have a configuration that says, do you want the bottom of the chart to be 0 down here always, or do you want it to be like the lowest number? For now, we're just going to make it 0. We may come back in another video and play with rescaling this, but for all intents and purposes, this should be okay. Const actual chart height is equal to the container height minus the y margin times 2. And then const gap between ticks. It's going to be the actual chart height divided by the data.length minus 1. And then we're going to have const y value gap is going to equal the y max minus the y min, or the minimum, divided by data.length minus 1. So that'll give us like a spacer between our values. So now over here, we're going to return the gap between the ticks, the y value gap, and the minimum, since that's 0. So we'll put all that in there. And then if we come back down to our y-axis ticks, I'm going to say const gap between ticks is equal to calculate height, and we're going to return data.map item index, and we'll say const y is equal to the container height minus the Y margin minus the gap between the ticks times the index. And here we're going to return G with the key, Y-axis, ticks, index. And here we will just make a line. And the x1 is going to equal the x margin, because we want it to be right up against here. And the y1 is going to be equal to the y. The x2 is going to equal x margin minus 10. So we'll back it off over here by 10 pixels. y2 is equal to y. Our stroke is the axis color, and our stroke width equals the axis width. Which we don't have. What would make the over here the width? Axis stroke width. There we go. Let's get the right variable name. And that should give us some ticks. So there we have our ticks. Pretty straightforward. So in the next video, we're going to come back and add our labels.